Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Vermont Renews, the March Convergence. I just want to let you know we are having everyone muted for the start of this call. We are really excited to be able to pull people together today. As folks are trickling in, I am going to go ahead and share a few different tech announcements that may be of support and help. So, one of the things to know, as you saw when you entered into the room, this event today is being recorded. So, we want to be mindful of your screen presence. Folks may be able to see you. Closed captioning is available. If you would like that, you can click down on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You should see something that says click live transcript, and then you'd go to show subtitles so you can see those closed captions that way. Again, we are asking that everyone that is not a stated speaker stays muted during the event unless you're actually in a breakout in and of itself. And if you need assistance, you can direct message our Rad Tech Help, which you can see right there in the chat. So the chat is a living function as well. Feel free to utilize that as you would like to. But we are so excited to be able to come together and talk about all of this today. So we've been gathered by the Renews Coalition here in Vermont, which is made up of organizations, individuals, and community members. So my name within all of this and my role within all of this is Kaya Morris, and I am the Movement Politics Director for Rights and Democracy Vermont. One of the things I want to do is lift up and celebrate our many different community partners and coalition members who've been a part of making today possible and the work that we are trying to do, a thing that will help support our communities moving into our future, a just future together. So we have a partnership that we've built between Rights and Democracy Vermont, the Vermont AFL-CIO, 350 Vermont, the Sierra Club Vermont, Justice for All, the Sunrise Hub of Middlebury, the Organic Farmers of Vermont, Community Action Works, staff from the UVM Gund Institute for the Environment, the Champlain Valley Democratic Socialists of America, the Nulhegan Band of the Abenaki, and Migrant Justice. And along with these great groups, we're also led by and inspired by the work of our BIPOC affinity group that's made up of more than a dozen BIPOC community members across Vermont. So before we get into a little bit of the details of what is Vermont Renews and what are we going to seek to do today, we find that it's important for us to begin with a land acknowledgement. So the Vermont Renews Coalition acknowledges the Mohican in southern Vermont and the Abenaki peoples as the traditional land caretakers of Indakana, which includes parts of Vermont, New England, and Quebec. As guests on the unceded territory of the Mohican and the Abenaki peoples, we honor their ancestors, their elders, their relations past, present, and emerging. And we also acknowledge that our nation has benefited from the uncompensated and exploited labor represented in the legacy of slavery and the present day reality of migrant farm workers. So, what will help to center our work today? Because we are going to try to get into some work here. This is a fabulous celebration and a wonderful community gathering where we're going to be seeking your thoughts and your visions, your hopes and your dreams and your demands for this just future. To achieve this, we're going to ground ourselves in some community agreements. We're going to recognize that we honor the different ways that people in our community got here today. We want to expect and accept discomfort, recognizing that this work can be messy. We're going to ask questions of ourselves and of others. We're going to engage in deliberative dialogue, not debate or arguing. That is not the purpose of our time here today. And we're not just here just merely to listen, but to actually engage. We acknowledge intent and we are accountable for our impact. We actively work against systemic oppression and how we support one another in unlearning those modes of oppression. We also work to understand how we, as individuals, benefit from the oppression of others. We are really excited for today's convergence, and I wanted to run you through some of the high points of our agenda today. So we will start our agenda with some icebreaker conversations that are going to help connect us and to come into community together. Then we're going to dive deeper into the work and how what we are trying to accomplish will take place on the national, the New England regional, and on the Vermont state levels. Now, a large portion of today's agenda will be centered on breakout conversations about how we can build the inclusive and powerful movement that we need in Vermont and how we may take local action. Lastly, we can't leave until we share with you the ways that you can get more active and take action in the weeks and in the months ahead. What we really want to hold dear as well is a concept of environmental justice, and one that does not just seek for equity. Often, when we think about environmental justice or when we look at legal definitions or societal frameworks for considering environmental justice, it's really saying we want to stop the harms that are happening and we want to make sure that every creature, whether it be human or otherwise, is able to live a flourishing life, and that those impacts of our environmental harms will no longer have the um, the deadly impacts that they hold. What we want to do is take it a little bit more of a next level and recognizing that within environmental justice, we're also needing to build in a reparative and a restorative component, recognizing that our BIPOC and most marginalized communities are the ones that have always borne the greatest burden of our environmental crises. Those burdens come back and compound in multiple ways that require that there's first a leveling, first a restoration before we can move towards equity. So we want to keep those things in mind as we think about the breadth and the reach of the work that we all seek to do. So, to get us in conversation about where we're going to go next, we're going to be looking to do some icebreakers. We can't be in community if we don't know each other. So, we are so thrilled, and it is my pleasure to welcome to our conversation today Liz Medina, who's from the AFL CIO, who's going to help get us in a conversation and break the ice through a very special exercise. Liz, welcome.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so glad to be with you all today. It's dreary outside my window, but seeing you all here today certainly brightens up everything for me. My name is Liz Medina. I am the director of the Vermont State Labor Council, AFL-CIO, which is our state's federation of unions and affiliate organizations. I belong to a union as myself, UAW, before I even joined the Vermont AFL-CIO as a director. But before we get into the brass tacks of the breakout rooms where we really plan the work on how we can bring a Green New Deal and environmental justice to our communities, as Kaya said, we need to get to know each other. We want to create some space for play and personal interaction. So you will be randomly paired with somebody else and given some questions. They're kind of odd questions, but embrace that. And these questions are designed to help you share your experiences and your imagination. So I encourage you to engage all of your senses and to be personal as much as you're comfortable doing so. Ultimately, of course, it's up to you what you share and how you share it. You'll have about 15 minutes with another partner to go through these questions. There'll be about 3 of them. And, you know, if you want to spend all your time with one question or go through all of them, you know, that's really up to you. All right, I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Thanks for returning, everybody. I think Kaya is back with us to resume her able role as host of this event.
It's good to see you, Dan. Thank you. I hope that that was really inspiring and lovely, just a lovely opportunity to connect with each other and learn a little bit more about each of us as we go forward with this work. So thank you all for your participation, and even those who might have not been ready. So thank you for being willing to be a part of this. So keep in mind, we're going to have another breakout session that'll be happening later in today's event. So in preparation for that, we're going to need to know which breakout room you'd like to actually be a part of, as we're going to be covering different topics within our Renew policy framework and the work that we're hoping to push forward in the now and in the future. So to let our tech people know which group you want to be a part of, we're asking that you rename yourself within Zoom. So what you'll do is you're going to go and you're going to add, so we have the 3 areas, and we'll put that in the chat so you'll know. F for food justice, H for housing, and G for green justice zones before your name in the room. We will go through a little bit more to explain what those are. But if you're starting to think about that now, if you might know where you are most interested, we'd love to be able to connect you there. So we're going to have you put that at the beginning of your name on the Zoom room itself. So you can rename yourself by putting your mouse over your own square within Zoom and then clicking the three little dots that appear and choose rename from the menu. If you don't know which group you're in yet or which one you want to go to, again, we're going to give you more information about all three. But if you have a sense of where you want to go, you can take care of that now, or you can take care of that when we'll give you an opportunity to do so again later. So enough about that housekeeping work. Let's get back to this fabulous conversation. So I hope that you know, and you're starting to get a little bit of a sense, if you've worked with us here within Rights and Democracy, and obviously all of our community partners that are part of this work, we're a part of something that's bigger than just Vermont itself. So we're going to start off today's fabulous guest speakers and topics thinking really big, thinking about how we can be part of a movement that's larger than ourselves and larger than just our state. So I'd like to welcome Betamia Cornell, who is the National Climate Justice Organizer from the Center for Popular Democracy. Thank you, Beta, for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. Again, my name is Beta. I'm calling in today from Jamaica, Queens in New York City. It's pretty rainy out here. So I'm guessing it might be raining where you are. So sending you all warm vibes on this cozy Sunday. Really excited to be joining your Convergence today. This is really exciting. And I'm almost positive this is the first event that's kicking off a whole week of events under the banner of Recovery, Recess, Time to Thrive. And I'm really excited to be chatting with all of you about what the Thrive Act is and how timely it is that we're going to talk about it. The Biden administration has big plans to unveil one of the biggest, if not the biggest, infrastructure bill ever seen this week. And our movement, the climate movement, is taking huge action this week, and that's really exciting. So I want to start off by naming some of the obvious. You know, our country faces severe intersecting crises at this moment, and from the pandemic to the climate crisis to jobs, racial inequality, massive unemployment, you name it. We're kind of in the middle of a huge crisis where all the crises are being elevated at once. Um, and the Thrive Act, surprisingly and really powerfully, addresses a lot of them, almost all of them. The climate crisis, the pandemic, racial justice, massive unemployment, economic distress, all of that is being addressed under the Thrive Act, and is transformational on all of those fronts. In the 2018 and 2020 midterm election, we really showed out to begin to shift power at the federal level. And that was made possible through a broad multiracial coalition that organized to turn out and vote. And the Thrive Act really represents the transformational change that we all envisioned in helping the Democratic Party get to this point. And polling has shown that every pillar of the Thrive Act is popular. So it's time for those in the halls of power in DC to deliver. The Thrive Act was also developed by hundreds of union, racial justice, indigenous, climate, progressive, and grassroots organizations that all joined forces alongside of more than 100 members of Congress to develop the Thrive Agenda and to ensure that it truly includes a diverse set of priorities. So what are some of those priorities? Let's dig into what they are. First and foremost, it authorizes a massive scale of investment sufficient to achieve full employment and create and sustain millions of family-sustaining jobs. And what this means is that it authorizes a minimum of $1 trillion per year over the next decade to create those 15 million family-sustaining jobs. We're talking about jobs in renewing our climate and care infrastructure in ways that cut pollution, advance racial justice, and end a massive unemployment crisis, the one that we're seeing now. It also ensures that jobs are created to meet high road labor standards and boost workers' rights in order and union rights. So they're able to form unions. It helps build a more just economy. The bill requires a strong wage and benefit standards, access to unions, equitable hiring that favors women and people of color. Um, if those things weren't written into these acts, the movement fears that the millions of jobs that would be created would fall below standards, and that's how the Thrive Act is ensuring that the jobs that it is creating is going to sustain families and communities for the long haul. Um, it also creates an avenue to um, oh, sorry, I lost my part. In relation to labor rights and in securing labor rights, it includes provisions such as stronger and swifter remedies when employers interfere with workers' rights, which is huge. Expanded freedom to organize without employer interference. Um, protects employees against strikes and other protest activity. Basically, all of the things that are within the PRO Act are also uplifted and centered as part of the Thrive agenda. Um, and for all of us here on the call today who are particularly interested in climate solutions, the Thrive Act is really about investing in the clean energy, clean efficiency, and clean infrastructure, sustainable agriculture in order to bring pollution down as fast as possible, and in those communities that have been mostly impacted by extractive industries, by environmental injustices. It centers those communities to get at least 50% of those investments. So that's huge. We've never seen anything like that, where 50% of investment in frontline communities is going to fight the systemic racism we've seen that causes those communities to be the first and worst hit by the climate crisis, by economic insecurity, and all of the things that are interconnected to that. It's pretty clear that we are being seen as a powerful force by the Biden administration, the climate justice movement in general. We're very broad, we're very big. CPD and its 53 affiliates is only one national organization represented at the Green New Deal Network, which has a 50-state priority that is really backing the Thrive agenda. And this week is a huge opportunity for the administration to see how broad our movement really is. We're having over 80 events across the country, from drive-in rallies to digital town halls to banner drops and puzzle piece deliveries. Like, I know that Congress people are getting puzzle pieces delivered to them. Just really awesome, amazing creative actions. Because we know that this is the moment right before the president and the administration reveals their plans. More than ever, we want to push that the Thrive agenda be a central part of that infrastructure bill. What else? I'd love to take questions, as there's so much, and there's so much to cover within 5 minutes, but I'd love to hear how this sounds exciting for what you all are thinking about in organizing around in Vermont. Are we able to hear like one or two people, Dan? Or Kaya?
For you, of course. You can also ask questions in the chat if that feels more comfortable.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll continue to try to answer them as we go through the event today.
What they do with the puzzle pieces?
So like, I know the action is they're delivering a big puzzle piece to Sinema in Arizona, Senator Sinema, and they're asking her to show up to a meeting where she used the missing puzzle piece on addressing climate change, which is fun. That's a fun and creative action. The only other thing I'll leave with is that the Thrive agenda is one of the most progressive, you know, policies I've ever seen in terms of protecting the rights of Indigenous folks. So there's provisions in there that secure, you know, American Indian, Alaska Native tribes to exercise their full and inherent civil authority, civil and regulatory authority over their own lands and resources, which is huge. Um, it also has some of the most progressive targets in terms of getting to clean energy, 100% clean energy by 2035, and through prioritizing renewables, and 100% zero emissions in new buildings by 2025 through the Green New Deal for Public Housing Act. So really, this is such a transformative bill. We're really excited that we've built momentum across the country, that RAD is part of the, you know, one of the groups across the country that is helping bring this vision to life and organizing folks behind it. I'm really excited, just really excited to see how y'all use this information to energize your work for how you're thinking for the next few months and years.
Oh, thank you so much, Beta. That was so great. This is truly an exciting thing. If you felt that, if this was moving you, if you found resonance in that, you know, this is an interactive space. Put that up in the chat. Please give us your snaps. Let us know. Use your emojis. You got that little smiley face down there. Click on that little character and you can pull up any kind of ways to throw up praise. This is a powerful moment and I'm grateful that you all are here. Thank you so much, Beta, for sharing that great news with us. So, so good. So
Thanks for
building
having
off of
me.
that incredible momentum, we are excited to share with you that we are part of a Renew New England Alliance, which is a powerful region-wide coalition of groups throughout all 6 states of New England. And to give you a little bit of the sense of the vision of our regional work itself, we're going to begin today with a short video that is about Renew New England.
A better world isn't just possible, it's necessary, and it starts with us.
How did that sit? How you feeling about that one? Are you understanding now? We are trying to shift things in ways that we have not done so before, and together we have so much more power. That's always been the case. That has been true throughout history, and it is absolutely central to this moment. So very exciting. So next, I am so excited to be able to bring to this conversation a true champion of this work within not only the Rights and Democracy family, but also within the Renew New England. I am pleased to welcome the Honorable Rhodes Island State Senator Cynthia Mendez, who's here to talk to us about the incredible work that Representative Senator Mendez is holding, as well as the ways that they're collaborating with other legislators to make this work real. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you so much, Kaya, for having me. I am thrilled to be here. Can you all hear me okay? All right, amazing. I am beyond words, really, really thrilled to meet my Vermont family right now and to be able to share with you some exciting things that's happening both in Rhode Island and regionally with the Renew movement and the Renew Coalition. Renew New England is a regional coalition of more than 150 leading grassroots organizations, including environmental justice advocates, indigenous tribes, labor union, racial justice organizations, faith communities, and youth groups. Through a deep coalition, building grassroots organizing, policy, and program development, we are fighting to transform New England and combat the overlapping crisis and racial injustice, mass unemployment, the coronavirus pandemic, and climate change. But I want to tell you a little bit of how we got here. I want to explain to you how I know this is possible because I lived it and I've been a part of it. And I just want to share a little bit of the backstory here. How did we get here? In 2019, Renew's partner on the ground, the Rhode Island Political Cooperative, announced a slate of candidates, 24 candidates to run on bold environmental, racial justice, economic justice platform. And it was a group of everyday people that passionately believed and were fighting for these things on the outside. And we got together and were able to run a slate of candidates. And we won big time. I'll give you an example of my race. I took on the chair of the Finance Committee. Actually, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. The Democratic Party here had not moved on a lot of important things. Environmental justice, they had not moved. $15 minimum wage had not moved. Healthcare had not moved. Housing would not move. And so we were dealing with a very, very conservative state house. And so this slate of candidates of everyday people, I had never been in politics before. I'd never ran for office before. I was a single mom working 2 jobs. I would spend my spare time working in food pantries and soup kitchens and serving the most vulnerable in our community. And when those community members said, the pipeline of suffering souls that are coming our way is never ending. You can give all your money, all your time, all your energy, and can hardly make a dent in it because the current political establishment has no political and moral will to see a change. And until we get someone at the head of that pipeline and get their hand on that valve, we will never be able to see that change. And so being able to work with a coalition and the slate of candidates to be able to decide that the very people that were serving the community, the very people that were elbow deep in the work should be the people in the seats of decision making, should be the people that were looking out for the people. And so I said yes to running. I also had to think about the world I was leaving my 16-year-old daughter, right? What planet she was inheriting. And like I said, we ran and we won. And so we announced on the State House steps in September 2019. In September 2020, I won my primary against the chair of the Finance Committee. He was slated to be the next Senate president, and we didn't beat him by a little bit. We beat him by 62-38. It made local and national news. And I wasn't the only one. Now I am in the State House legislating with other progressive candidates who are fighting for the Green New Deal, fighting for Medicare for all, fighting for the indigenous tribes, fighting for labor rights and environmental rights and clean air and clean water. like the basics. And so that's just a little bit of how we got here and how I know that this is possible. And I want to tell you a little bit about the policy and what we're kind of fighting for now together, the vision, and then dive in a little bit into the nitty-gritties about why I know it's going to continue to be possible region-wide. The Grassroots Coalition is in each state has spent since the beginning of 2020 developing policies and programs to ensure that all New Englanders have affordable housing and food and clean air to breathe and water to drink. So the policy agenda and looking forward, the beginning of 2021 across New England, we had created policies for jobs to create tens of thousands of dignified, well-compensated jobs, to launch union-led programs to equip workers with skills necessary to expand the green industry. These are robust bills that I've been very excited to see from the genesis to now. Housing, building tens of thousands of units of high quality, energy efficient, affordable housing, installing rooftop solar panels on hundreds of thousands of low income housing. We have slashed carbon emission plans, addressing several housing shortages and dramatically reducing utility bills for low income customers. Food, which is a huge issue, building a network of urban community gardens, rural farms that pay workers fair wages to locally grow nutritious food using regenerative agricultural practices. Enhancing food security for low-income communities and reducing our region's dependence on global carbon-intensive food supply chain. Cutting that at the core and giving the power back to the people. Lastly, a strong policy on clean air, dismantling the polluted industries in the frontline overburdened communities. Right now, a week ago, we have the Port of Providence, where we have a state house that has been committed to allowing them to get all the pollutants, LNG. The Port of Providence is seeing all the most highly polluted industries parked right outside their door. We have the highest rate of asthma. Children cannot breathe, are missing school because they cannot breathe. And we have a state house that refuses to do anything about it. And those same people that are in the community, banding together, building coalitions that are fighting, were the people that informed this policy. They were at the seat of the table. They built this policy and then handed it off to the champions that ran on it to work. So it's not something, we didn't do this the way the establishment does this. We didn't do this with concocting our own grand ideas and then trying to get people to buy in. The people wrote it. The people built it. We are here to fight for it. Our goals: to implement a region-wide jobs guarantee, ensuring a good job for everyone who wants it. Building a network of community health centers across New England. That's the next initiative. I'm really excited about this one because I have a healthcare background, where people can receive free, high-quality medical care without, whether they have insurance or not. Construct large-scale solar and wind farms without displacing marginalized communities. Imagine that. Developing a free, high-speed public transportation system connecting each New England state and providing frontline communities with convenient access to transit hubs. Decarbonizing our electricity sector by 2030. And launching a pollution cleanup task force, restoring damaged ecosystems and removing waste from frontline communities. If you haven't noticed, frontline communities are at the center of this work. Racial justice is embedded in the policy. You cannot strip it. You cannot delete it. You can't edit it. You can't amend it. It is part of it. It's built by them, for them, and then championed with them. And that is why I'm incredibly thrilled to be a part of this movement. I'm incredibly thrilled to be able to carry this policy into the State House. So how do I know it's possible? After we won the slate of candidates, now we have to legislate. Day one of the Democratic caucus, I was in the caucus with several of my other candidates who were backed by Renew. Again, Renew's partner on the ground is the Rhode Island Political Cooperative. We all ran on the slate with the Rhode Island Political Cooperative, and we are there in the caucus. And I don't know what to expect. I'm a new legislator. And we saw the Senate leadership, who has refused to move on any of these things, get up in the front of the caucus and make an announcement that they've never made before about policies that they were going to do this year, made a commitment, had it written down, and they handed it off to the press. That had never happened before. I had previous colleagues, well, now colleagues, but senior senators and members of the media come up to me and say, what you just witnessed had never happened before. In the first month of legislating, we passed a $15 minimum wage. The state has never done that. We are passing policies with teeth. We are passing policies, and this is in the first month. So what I can tell you is this organizing, this grassroots movement can move the most moderate, the most unmovable. What we thought was unshakable can be shaken, and we've proven that. But the power it always has to be the people. It's always been the people. And so this is, and we can do this in other states. We will do this in other states. We will do this region-wide. This is a region-wide work. But I'm proud to be in the smallest state of the union and to be able to share my story with you and let you know that they're moving. What we thought was unshakable is crumbling, and the people are rising, and their voices are being heard. And it's not one champion; it's all of us. And so, if it was just, let's be honest, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? We just spent time imagining, using our collective imaginations for a world we want. If it was just policy, if it was coming up with a good policy, we'd be done. There's good policy right now that's collecting dust on someone's desk because they do not have the political and moral will to do it. What it's going to take is organizing power, giving power back to the people, and getting champions in office to continue to hold the government accountable until it does what it's supposed to do for BIPOC communities, frontline communities, for our environment, for our health, for our children's future, for clean air, for clean water, for dignified jobs. And so it's not just policy, it's people organizing inside and outside. And that's what the Renew Coalition is doing. And so I am just happy to share this with you. I'm happy to see the same thing happening in Vermont. I'm thrilled for what you're all doing. And I'm beyond overjoyed to share with you that this ripple effect will continue. And it looks like us. It's always looked like us. So thank you.
Woo! That's right. It has always looked like us. It has always been us, and we are the ones that need to move it. Those were gorgeous words and so much hope, so much inspiration. I hope you all feel motivated not only by that incredible work, but by the successes that they have at hand already, right? So we always think that we're small states, but we are mighty. We are mighty, and especially if we are working together in collaboration and in true solidarity. So exciting. So now let's dive in a little bit deeper to come to a better understanding of what Renews is all about. So just following this, we're going to do some more breakout room work. And if you missed the instructions or the prompts for that before, I want to provide those for you again if you have not yet set yourself up for this. So in preparation for this exercise, we need to know which breakout room you'd like to be a part of. So to let our tech people know which group you want to be a part of when we move into that space, we're asking again that you rename yourself by adding an F for food justice, an H for housing, or a G for green justice zones before your name in this Zoom. So again, you can rename yourself by putting your mouse over your square, over your own name, clicking on the 3 dots that appear, and choose rename from the pull down menu. And then again, you're going to learn a little bit more about each of those areas. So you can decide where you want to go, or if you want to change after you've heard our fabulous presentation. If you are still having trouble, let one of us know in the chat and we can try to help to rename you as well. But it's going to be very important for the next part. So I am really excited to be able to welcome to this conversation. We'd love to be able to provide you with a small presentation about the work that we're doing here in Vermont. And so joining me for this conversation and this presentation is Kate Logan, who is our Director of Policy and Programming for both Vermont and New Hampshire, and has been at the table on the national, regional, and statewide level, helping to support get this work in play. So excited to welcome you all, and we're going to share a little bit more about Vermont Renews. So hello, everyone. Again, so this is going to be our presentation about Renews, which is really centered on building a movement for a just and equitable future. So again, I'm Kaya Morris, Movement Politics Director, Rights and Democracy, Vermont. And we also have Kate Logan here with us. Thank you. Next slide.
Everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kate. So the question comes, is the Green New Deal, isn't it enough? That's a bold initiative that we are seeking to put into place. Is it enough? And the answer came back that it wasn't. What we found was that the Green New Deal was still centered on the old concepts of the New Deal itself, which is not only problematic, but for many, it's felt racist. It left behind so many others that it was purporting to lift up, and any gains that were at hand were lost very shortly after. So when we're thinking about how we're trying to center this work in those who are most impacted by our climate crisis, we're thinking about our BIPOC communities, right? That's one of the most areas globally, it has been found that those who are identified as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, individuals of the global majority, that the climate movement has not been centered on those needs, and the solutions have not come from those communities, nor have they been able to have the reach that they purported that they would. So we seek to change that. Next slide.
Okay. Great. Thanks so much all for being here today. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and lots of new ones as well. We're so excited to talk about the work that we've been doing here in New England and in Vermont. As you've heard a little bit earlier, the Renew New England Alliance began at the beginning of January 2020, just before COVID. We've now grown to over 150 social and economic justice, labor, and Indigenous organizations from each state in New England. Last year, we developed a policy framework with the help of university and other nonprofit research partners. We started a decarbonization modeling process that was centered in commitments to equity and justice that resulted in our policy framework that we made public last year. Next slide, please. And the other thing that we did last year was we started the Vermont Renews Coalition. So Vermont has joined the Renew New England Alliance, and we're building a movement for a national, regional, state, and municipal just transition. The Vermont Renews Coalition convened for the first time in 2020, and you can see now that we've grown to about 15 members in the state. And we're growing from there. And our own movement politics director from Vermont, Kaya Morris, has also founded a BIPOC advisory council for the coalition that advises our coalition on a number of different racial justice issues in our policy, as well as doing some of their own organizing work. Really exciting. Next slide, please. So the goals of the Renew New England Alliance and the Vermont Renews Coalition are to develop thriving, equitable, and sustainable local economies that center the priorities of workers and frontline communities and create good paying union jobs. We want to achieve a zero carbon energy sector throughout all of New England by 2030, and we want to achieve zero carbon building and transportation sectors by 2040. And we know that in order to do this in the way that we want to, we're going to have to enact democratic reforms that make government inclusive of and accountable to. Awesome. Thank you. The core of our policy framework is a jobs guarantee. Everyone, our vision is that everyone in New England who wants a job will have one. We're going to preserve the jobs that we have now, create new jobs, especially unionized jobs. We're going to support small business, local business, especially workers' cooperatives, and we're going to create new public employment initiatives at every opportunity. And above all that, all of these jobs are going to help us improve and modernize our regional infrastructure and make sure that everyone's basic human needs are met. Next slide. And so the heart of our policy framework are those basic human needs. Our jobs guarantee program is centered in housing, healthcare, food, energy, transportation, and clean air and water. And I saw that note about care work in there. Yeah, definitely. Long-term care is a super important aspect of the healthcare system, I think, that we need in our communities. And of course, everybody wants to know how we're going to pay for all of this. And so the 7th part of our policy framework lists out a bunch of different financing methods for all of these programs that we're espousing. So next slide, please. All right, and now I'm going to pass it back to Kaya, who is going to tell you about the process that we went through to narrow down as a region the 3 strategic campaigns that we want to run this year in all 6 states in New England.
Thank you so much, Kate. So exciting. So this is a really exciting platform to think about where our areas of focus are going to be. So while the entire platform does cover multiple sectors, we recognize that we have to kind of move forward with some particular priorities in this moment. So across the region, we are lifting up work in each of our states around work for green housing retrofits, food justice, and in a new promising project, which you heard a little bit about how that's feeling and playing in Rhode Island called Green Justice Zones. Next slide, please. So we began really needing to think about the blind spots within our energy justice. So we recognize that low income households in the region spend a median of 10.5% of their income on energy, which comes from the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. So when we think about those energy burdens, they're pretty significant. They're 3 times higher than the average energy in New England. Low income and communities of color consume less energy than wealthier households and are more likely to have less efficiency within their housing. And inefficiency is a major contributor to a higher energy burdens. So you can see the differences there around how it impacts some of our different groups, from folks in the global majority, with Blacks coming in at 43% higher than that of the white communities. Nationally, Native American at 45%, and within Latinx households, 20% higher. And again, these are national numbers. Next slide. Okay, so we our solution, we are looking to make green housing retrofits. So this is looking at a wide variety of things, including weatherization, but it's also looking at the need to update our very old housing stock through things like safety repairs, sustainable energy, smart meters, and more. And it's gonna, okay, my elderly cat's done with our show. So, and it's about providing a progressive funding structure that's targeted to the households that can least afford these improvements to ensure that those that are most in need are able to access those. And it's not just a project of middle and upper class individuals within our state. Next slide, please. We also recognize that there's challenges within our food system, and due to COVID, 1 in 3 people in Vermont are uncertain where their next meal will come from. So if we were to break that down, thinking about where our food comes from within the agricultural sector, the number of farms owned by people of the global majority is dismally low, with Hispanic non-white individuals coming in at 1.5% of ownership, the Black community at 0.2, Asian American at 1.9, not even a full. We're looking at Native American at 3, and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander at 0.08%. So you can see these numbers are pretty sad, and the rates of which people are losing their farms and the ability to maintain the farms from those that have them is just something that it's a trend that we must reverse. Next slide. So our solution is looking at food justice. We're thinking about land procurement and reclamation efforts. We're looking at support throughout the food system from producers to distribution. Our proposals are seeking to provide financial support for BIPOC or low-income individuals and small independent farmers or co-ops who use sustainable ecological practices and fair labor standards. It's looking to increase food security for low-income communities and providing grant and funding opportunities to purchase land, greenhouses, water, seeds, farming equipment, technical assistance, food delivery, for example, or compensating workers. It makes mention of thinking of ways to better support and bolster up our mutual aid efforts as we're still in the reeling from the COVID crisis, as well as cannabis growing. Next. Thank you. So now we're talking about no sacrifice zone. So this is really coming from incredible work that needs to look at a census level data. So when we're saying that our BIPOC are those from the global majority, those who are living in poverty, individuals who are forced into the margins of our seats away from our seats of power, how are they most impacted by our environmental crisis? We need to get to specifics. So this, what you're seeing is it was the beginning stages of a map, which is now continuing to grow, that has been drawn together through King Ren and Dr. Bindu Pandikar as part of a Rejoice project that's looking at census level data to try to identify where are our hot spots, where are we seeing that folks are being impacted the most and are receiving the least amount of remedy. So it's an incredible initiative, and mapping and data is something that we always need, and especially in the policy world. Next slide. Thank you. So our solution is looking out at the great models that have come out of Rhode Island using a green justice zones approach. So in 2021, we're looking to publicly fund some pilot projects for 1 or 2 environmental justice hotspots. These are funds dedicated to environmental remediation in areas that are called green justice zones. And so then what happens, and what happened in Rhode Island, is that the BIPOC community were then formed into individuals were part of a participatory referendum process led by BIPOC individuals to create a participatory budgeting process to determine how funds would be reallocated for revitalization and a cessation of the harm, to then, again, as we talked about, bringing folks up to parity so we can move towards equity. Next slide. So that is the high level piece. I did want to acknowledge there was something brought into the chat that I want to bring into this conversation. Again, as we're thinking about where are impacted communities, who are the individuals that are in these impacted communities? Absolutely, our disability community is one that we cannot ignore. And the needs that are there are enormous. And so the many ways that these oppressions intersect in our lives and in our identities are absolutely felt within the disability community. And so that is something that we will continue to place a priority on raising those voices within that. So I see some questions there that are in the chat. We'll try to answer those as we can. It looks like we are getting ready to switch over to green justice. So, I'm sorry, to our breakout rooms. I apologize. I'm trying to host and present and do a whole bunch of things all at the same time. So we're going to get ready to break into our breakout rooms. If you have not yet changed, or if you're still needing help changing your name so that we'll know which room to sort you out into, please be sure to let us know in the chat, and we'll try to get you set up. We're going to then switch over and move into some facilitated conversations within breakout rooms around topics. So let me just get to our instructions so I can make sure we have what we need. So we are going to take a teeny break, and I hope you will come back, because we need you to come back. We need you in this conversation, but we want to recognize everyone's need to breathe through this work. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. Again, if you cannot rename yourself within this time, please stay on and tech will help you do it. You don't have to leave the Zoom room. You can just turn off your camera if you'd like, but we will be back in 10 minutes to pick this back up again. So looking forward to talking with you all very soon. Okay, so Stephanie, if you want to go ahead and rename yourself, it looks like Stephanie just joined us. If you want to rename yourself so we can get everyone set, that would be great. If you have not done so already, if there's anyone else remaining, I think we're good. Do we look good, Dan?
Yeah, I think Stephanie's the only one who hasn't given themselves a letter, and I know that
I have, okay, Mia Schultz.
Everyone is in a group except for Stephanie, so everyone else
Fabulous.
is good. Yep.
Fabulous. All right. Sounds great. So we're going to go ahead and we are recording now again. Once again, I want to thank you all if you have just stepped back into the space. We're about to go into breakout groups to go talk about our different areas of focus within the Renew platform. So if there is any other questions that you have, the chat will be live, and you can still always interact with anyone within the chat to come back to where we were. So I'm going to now pass this over to for our breakout activity. So I'm going to include in this conversation and welcome into the fold Jael Pulskamp of 350 Vermont and Gary Stewart of the Champlain Valley Democratic Socialists of America.
Well, I'm not
Gary,
sure what,
Gary, you're on mute, Gary. There you go.
Sorry. I'm sorry about that. Jumped the gun. Hi, everyone. It's great to have you all here today. And I'm Gary Stewart, and I am a member of the Champaign Valley chapter of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, as well as being a member of its eco-socialist and socialist education work groups. And Jaya, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi everyone, I'm Jael Polskamp. I work with 350 Vermont. I'm calling in from Worcester, Vermont. Welcome.
Yes, again, welcome everyone. Like Kaya said, we are now going to use all the inspiring information that we have received today to break out into groups and spend some time talking about how to make real social environmental changes here in our beloved Vermont. You'll be assigned to a breakout group, each with a trained facilitator and note taker based on the issue area you have selected. The groups will have about 35 minutes for discussion. The organizers of today's event have designed these breakout groups to be safe places for open sharing and discussion, where all ideas grounded in the commitment for liberation for all are welcomed and encouraged. We ask participants to keep their comments respectful, supportive, and as much as possible to the point. We encourage all of you to take this opportunity to think and speak boldly, even excitedly, on your vision of what a just and ecologically sound Vermont would look like, and how we together can make it happen. So we want to, again, thank you all for your commitment to and passion for this endeavor. Now, before we break out, are there any questions from our participants? If not, I think we can go ahead into the breakout groups.
Trickling back in from those great conversations. I hope that this was really uplifting for each of you. What we'd love to be able to do now is take a moment to have some sharebacks from the different breakout groups around things that you heard that were impactful. We'll have a few minutes, maybe one or two questions that you felt like there was some real important synergy around, or some, reflections that you definitely want to lift in this space. I'd love to be able to start off with any of those. I can either call on areas of topics, or if folks know who they are already, feel free to unmute yourself, and let's share out.
Housing is a human right, and taking the eminent domain of buildings like that we have in Burlington that are just sitting here empty, not being used, being allowed to dilapidate and make our city look horrible, and not being utilized to house people that are houseless. And something else that came up in our group was pricing, how people are being priced out of their housing is a very big issue, especially here in Burlington. And landlords not keeping their properties, up to code. In some places in the state of Vermont, not even having housing codes, is something that we learned. And it's unbelievable. They don't have just the basic codes to say, you cannot allow your building to look like this. You can't allow it to not be safe. It's got to be safe for people to be able to habitate, without being hurt or made sick. So those are the few of the areas that we spoke about.
Thank you. Green Justice Zones.
Well, in our group, it was a great group of 6 of us. We had a lot of focus on the question of who gets to be heard and who gets to make decisions, and whether it was in a big place like Burlington, or whether it was in Alberg, or any big town, small town, regional part of the state. Who's at the table? Who's being heard?
Thank you for that. Any reflections from the food justice group?
Yes, so I took some notes, and there is the Vermont Agriculture and Food System Strategic Plan, which I will try and get into the chat, which if we follow has a lot of good suggestions. It's part of the Farm to Plate program. We started the conversation with the fact that 1 in 3 are needing food now in Vermont because of the COVID epidemic, and the need is just growing hugely, and we're not keeping up with the demand. We also need to encourage regenerative agriculture and organic local produce, but it's not really accessible to many in the state, and we need to make it more accessible. One good thing was that 3 Squares Vermont had a program last summer where they made food accessible through local farmers markets, and people who belong to the program, it's the SNAP program in Vermont, they could get 3 times the amount they normally would through the coupon system, and that was very successful. That was a statewide program. So that was an example of things that can work.
That's great, thank you. Are there any other, because there were some, under each topic, there were multiple breakout groups. Did anybody else want to circle back? Anything further you wanted to share from housing or green justice zones or food justice?
I'll continue with food justice really quickly. So we found a lot of work already happening in communities, especially to meet immediate needs, mutual aid, food shelves, and so on. And then some work that's coming out that's looking for a deeper, more structural change. Vermont Relief Collective, Northeast Farmers of Color, Agrarian Commons. The bigger idea, I think, that was expressed around food justice is really leading towards a different way of living, a different way of relating to each other and to our land through food, and really thinking about a food system that allows anyone who wishes to get involved and produce food would have that ability and access, and anyone who needs food, which is everyone, would have access to the good quality food. And the last thing, in terms of some of the barriers, the people who have the power are making the rules to continue to support the type of system that has perpetuated the crisis that we're seeing now, both in terms of climate and all the inequities of the food system. So to change that requires changes both in the communities and our legislation, in access to land, in the way food is produced, and critically who's making those decisions, and to open that up to more communities who have historically been left out.
For that, we have time for a few more comments, if anyone else wants to share.
I would just like to share a bit about what we discussed in our Green Justice Zone group, which dovetails with another Green Justice Zone group. We did talk about the need to just expand the communication and the conversation. There are a lot of people in our group that, have marginalized identities or live in low-income communities, but the fact that we are all meeting here on Zoom today already denies some people the ability to participate in this community. So the need to just increase the ways in which we communicate in order to increase participation from those who are most impacted. And also we discussed the need to tie our conversation to community action to actually support the communities who need it the most. you know, you need a good reason to show up if you're, you know, you're spending potentially a precious fuel or time to come and have a conversation. So tying together community education and mutual aid was identified as a powerful way to build a movement to, you know, build green justice zones and create environmental justice.
Good, thank you, thank you. Anyone else? Did anyone from housing want to share anything, a final thought?
We also spoke about weatherizing homes, how it's being piecemeal to people that can afford it, that own homes, as opposed to the people that are in rental units, you know, and how that is being done, because it's not just homeowners that need to be able to get this done. We need to be able to force the landlords to insulate their housing units so that rental units and renters are also protected and warm. And how we set that up structurally is what we need to think about as well. The other things, and goes from job training all the way up to funding to be able to get this done structurally.
Fantastic, thank you. So how did those feel to people? Were those resonant? Does that sound like thoughts that you might have around these areas? Are you feeling excited about it? Please let us know in the chat. We are not done yet with our conversation today, and would love to hear your thoughts. What are your hopes? What are your great ideas? What are your concerns as we move forward? So we are also really fortunate to have this incredible community that we're doing so much more work with around, and I'm very excited to be able to welcome more officially Dan Fingus, who's our organizing director of Rights and Democracy, to talk with us about ways that you can get active in this work today and in the future. And we have a lot going on, and I'm really looking forward to hearing back from Dan on all of this. Dan.
Thanks, Kaya. I mean, it's been an amazing afternoon. I mean, the inspirational speakers that we had in the 1 o'clock hour were unbelievable, and hearing how so much is being done in other places and how we can model and also be inspirations to other parts of the country is really great. And we had these beautiful conversations, both to get to know each other at the beginning and now just the group conversations about how we can take more action and remember who's in the conversation and who's not. It's been really good, but we need to make sure that this great event that I think we're all feeling much more inspired and hopeful and ready to work leads to some real action. And so we do have ways for people to take action right away. We've created a Vermont Renews toolkit. Our tech help person is going to be sharing their screen so that we can see what it looks like. And this toolkit has resources and actions and events that we can take right away. Actions we can take right away, events that we can attend. She's going to drop the link in the chat here in a second. And this is going to be an ever-growing and evolving document. So as we get more resources, we're going to drop them in here. As we have new actions, we're going to be changing them. And events is going to get updated on a weekly basis as well. And so this is just like a one-stop shop to see what's going on with Vermont Renews. I will say the first thing that we have in those resources is some information about the VT BIPOC Land Access and Opportunities Act, the Vermont Regenerative Economy Act, along with the Vermont Renews website, the Thrive Agenda website. As far as taking action, there's, the bills I just mentioned are things that we can definitely take action on and email your state legislator. There's also a link in there to email Patrick Leahy, our U.S. Senator. As we heard from Beta Coronel, the bold, exciting federal legislation in the Thrive Agenda, we need it to pass. Senator Sanders and Congressman Welch have already signed on, and so that leaves us with one federal representative who needs to sign on still. So we need to put pressure on Senator Patrick Leahy to add his name to that bill. So you can check out that link in the toolkit. We also have a green housing petition that you can sign and hopefully share with your networks as a way for us to really build the support and audience for the need for green housing retrofits and the action that we need to take on the Vermont state level. the last thing that we have in this toolkit are several events. We actually have an action-packed week led off by today's event. We have 3 events on Wednesday. Wednesday is a Thrive National Day of Action. And so the first is there's a Renew New England press conference featuring our very own State Senator Kesha Ram, along with U.S. Senator Ed Markey, highlighting the need in New England for the Thrive agenda to be included in the Recovery Act that's being debated by Congress right now. And we want to be able to make sure that everyone knows that the states of New England think that adding a Thrive agenda to the Recovery Act is a good idea. It's something that we need in Vermont and across New England. The second event on the 31st is our Allies with Sierra Club. Steve Crowley, some of you might have been in his group earlier. Steve's a great leader with Sierra Club. He's helped put together a conversation with Congressman Peter Welch at 7 o'clock on Wednesday evening. And the big part of the conversation is going to be Congressman Welch talking about why he supports the Thrive agenda and how we can move forward on the federal level. And then lastly, at 8 o'clock on the 31st, Rights and Democracies Institute, which is our RAD C3 partner, is going to have the Traverse, Vermont Thrives, Regenerative Economy, and BIPOC Land Access, featuring State Representative Brian Chena, who I think is on this call right now, along with multiple representatives of the Vermont NAACP. So a lot of really great events on Wednesday, so opportunities to continue to be in community this week. Later in the calendar, we also have an amazing Jobs Guarantee panel featuring Joshua Keston from Renew New England, Stephanie Yu from Public Assets Institute, Liz Medina from Vermont State Labor Council, AFL-CIO, Pavlina Cherneva, the Associate Professor of Economics at Bard College, and Fidel Kabab from Denison University, all talking about the need for a jobs guarantee, both here in Vermont and on a national level. That's on April 8th. There's information in the toolkit about that. And then lastly, we want you to save the date, Saturday, May 1st. It's May Day, which is International Workers' Day. It's also Green Up Day in Vermont this year. And we're hoping to work with our partners at AFL-CIO and Migrant Justice and others to really look at how we can have a workers' rights in the green economy event on May Day. So save that date, more information to come. And with all of that, I'll turn it back to our amazing host for the afternoon, and we should all put up those celebration and hands and thanks to Kaya Morris for leading another great event. I'll let Kaya do the closing. Kaya.
All right. Thank you all for coming and joining us today. This has been a great afternoon of really important conversations. So exciting to see you all and to learn so much more about your dreams, your visions, and your ways moving forward for us to renew our state. Thank you all. Take good care, be safe out there, and stay in touch. You can find us on social media and throughout the internet. Have a great day, all. In solidarity, we move.